Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 25 of the Aviation Spotters podcast. I am your host, Colin Moser. As you guys can see from this title, you know this is going to be one hell of an interview. Before that, though, I just want to reflect on last episode with Florian, and he provided some awesome perspective on aviation photography, don't you think? I really love the part when he says, I don't need the buffer that the D500 offers. I just need a one shot. And if you're at a location and nobody's around you, you're doing it right. And I really do feel that. I love that. If you guys haven't had a chance, please go back and listen to the episode. He does some awesome work, and he provides a really good perspective on photography and what his definition of aviation photography is. And with that being said, though, let's bring it on to episode 25. And my guest needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. My guest today is the former editor-in-chief of Combat Aircraft magazine. He is the founder of the Centre of Aviation Photography, and he does all the photo work for the Fighter Pilot podcast. So it is my absolute privilege and honor from Farnborough, England, to welcome Mr. Rich Cooper on the show. Rich, good evening. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm really good. What an introduction. Goodness me, I can't believe it. That's amazing. It's a real honour to be here. I really enjoy doing these. This kind of like new media, isn't it? This new era of aviation photography communications that we're in at the moment. So it's an honour to be on here with you, Colin. It really is.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, think about it with COVID and all that. And we couldn't go out to an airport, so I think a lot of photographers had to find another way just to communicate and talk to their friends and all that. And I think there's a lot of good stuff that came out of COVID when I
definitely 100% agree with that. Yeah.
And I should also point out that Rich and I we tried doing this about almost a month ago now, a little over a month ago.
I can't believe you're bringing that up. You don't need to do that, dude. You're all right.
It's funny. It's funny for the listener to hear this, but we set a time, right? And I instead of looking at the Great Britain Standard Time, I looked at UTC, and when we set upon a certain time, like, okay, cool, I'll wake up at this 7 a.m. Come to realize that it was actually 4 a.m. when I should have been up. So
oh dear.
Anyway,
it's hard enough for us to keep up with it over here, even, you know, what the plus ones are and summertime and everything else. But you can quite easily blame Brexit if you like. And I'll let you. It's cool.
You know what's funny? Actually, when I met you very briefly at Star Wars Canyon in 2019, that's actually what we talked about was Brexit.
Yeah, right. Full circle.
Anyway, so let's get started, man. Let's kind of get an introduction from so who you are, where you're from, and some things about you.
Sure. So, yeah, Rich Cooper, run the Centre of Aviation Photography since 2015. That's my current output into the aviation photography world, but I've been doing it quite a long time. You know, it's actually since I was 7 years old, would you believe? So, literally had my dad put a camera in my hand at the 1982 Farnborough Airshow and never really looked back since. That's a long time ago now. And really quickly got into it, obviously, because my father was such a prolific aviation photographer and journalist at the time, and still is to a degree, obviously, but back then, certainly. Well, I just used to be able to shadow him wherever he went, you know, working with the militaries all around the world, but specifically in the UK predominantly. And it was a very different world back then, wasn't it? You know, the security concerns and the way militaries operated and the classification levels and all of that was very different. So it was really easy for me as a, you know, wide-eyed lad in short trousers to kind of go along with him on shoots. So it was, and we obviously also had huge air shows in the UK and Europe every weekend throughout the whole summer, you know, military air shows, that open houses at these USAF bases and stuff. So it was really easy to get hooked, and I did, hook, line and sinker. So I actually had my first photograph published when I was 11 years old, and that was of a Phantom up at RAF Lucas. And it was just, you know, we were on holiday up there, dude. You know, it was just like literally a case of, oh, we're in the area. Can we come in and take some photographs? And of course, you know, they said yes. And that really got me thinking. I'd actually really like to go into the Royal Air Force as a photographer. And then by the time that came around, I at the right age, sort of like 16, 17 years old for the first kind of recruitment. Unfortunately, the RAF started shrinking. It's when all the budget cuts really started hitting. So that didn't actually happen. I didn't get to go into the RAF as a photographer, but looking back on it, it was that's quite a good thing it happened that way in the end. So I then went into publishing. Cutting a long story short, there I was working at Heathrow Airport for an aviation media company, and I was responsible for like a weekly magazine, monthly publication, bi-monthly, quarterly, annual. It was a crazy time. This is in like early 20s, so it was quite a mad time. And whilst I was working on the weekly one, I met the editor of Aircraft Illustrated magazine, Alan Burney, absolutely fantastic chap, and we got on really well. And at the time, he needed a deputy to come into the magazine, Aircraft Illustrated, which at the time was Europe's largest aviation mag. And I joined, and we did that, and we then also bought Combat Aircraft magazine. We bought that over from the States to be a UK-based magazine sold in America. And I ended up being editor of that for a period of 10 years. And then left that world in, 2008, and just did it freelance. Did a load of freelance stuff for a long time. Went away from aviation for a little while, about 4 or 5 years, and did some youth charity work around my area. And then came back into it in 2015, fully immersed in aviation photography with COAP, the Centre of Aviation Photography, which is where we find ourselves today.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about COAP and a little bit of time with combat aircraft here in a bit, but I just want to just kind of talk about something real quick. So you first went to Farnborough in 1982.
Yeah, so, I was maybe even before that, but that's the first time with a camera for sure.
I mean, that's changed a lot in that time, just between the Cold War, and that's actually the start of the arms race again with the Soviets and the U.S. And well, at the time before everything shrunk, you said like everything started to shrink after the Cold War. What was your favorite event back in the day to attend back in the UK?
Absolutely, without doubt, the Mildenhall Air Fete. It was fantastic. There was a really unique vibe to the place. I mean, we used to get in there super early, like, I don't know, 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're just firing up the burgers. They're actually called what they call wet burgers, which is this incredible sauce, sort of like a secret sauce. No one really knew what was in it, but goodness me, I got my mouth watering already. And I found a picture of me the other day with eating 3 of these burgers at like 7 o'clock in the morning. 3 burgers and a Mountain Dew for breakfast. It was absolutely extraordinary. And the static was awesome. And it was also one of the first big ones of the year. It was kind of like late May bank holiday weekend that used to take place. So it was the real season opener. And the amount of aeroplanes that were on static display, and then the amount of air power that you'd see in the air during the flying display was just absolutely amazing. So yeah, without question, that would be number one. Then you got things like the Alconbury shows and the Upper Hayford Open days and the RAF at Home days, that sort of thing. The Battle of Britain shows. I mean, that period of 80s to 90s was pretty special to be alive in. It's like anything though, isn't it? I suppose we could all say, I'd love to have been around in the 60s, and then those guys that were doing it in the 60s and 70s would be thinking, I'd love to be around in the 50s, So it is all relative, but certainly for me, I'm very lucky to be able to at least look back on the 80s and 90s with a little bit of memory that was left.
Yeah, and back before that really big accident happened in England too, so a lot of really balls to the wall type deal and all that. And I mean, I got memories with my dad going to air shows around here in Idaho, and back when Mountain Home was still flying the B-1. And there's a little small airport called Caldwell Industrial near the. If you look at the map of Idaho, it's near the west end of the Treasure Valley. And this is like 97, 98. I was 2 or 3, and my dad. He keeps telling me, he's like, yeah, we were just looking over here. Then all of a sudden, here comes a full sweep pass by the B-1 on full burner to sneak pass.
Dude, doesn't get much better.
Unfortunately, times have changed and all that, and there's a lot more safety aspect. But also another part of this question is, what also other hobbies outside of aviation do you have?
Nothing. It's my life. No, it's it kind of is though.
Yeah.
No, I love football, soccer. Absolutely love playing it while I still can. Haven't got many more years left. Perhaps I shouldn't even be doing that anymore, but it really hurts nowadays. So I do enjoy that, and I love watching it with my son, and I help run his team as well, which is great.
Oh, cool.
Outside of that, it's like obviously family stuff is huge. We're really blessed with an awesome family, both sides of my wife and I, so that's really cool. I love being an uncle. And food, culture, traveling, all that good stuff.
You can, especially, it's really nice for you guys over there just to be able to travel. Well, back before COVID, but try to travel, like all the countries, the European countries that were close and all that. I don't know how if Brexit's going to change any of that, but that's not for this podcast.
It won't be too bad. It'll be all right.
But it's really nice that you guys are able to within like a day's drive being like in Germany or Spain or something like that, right? And then now for us, it's just like, well, and McDonald's is the same no matter where you are in the States. So, I am pretty jealous of that. Real quick, so since you're a football fan, a European football fan, because, I don't know why we call it football anyway. What's your favorite team?
Southampton.
Okay.
Yep, underachievers. You got to be a real fan to support them. And that also goes back through the generations as well, because that's from my dad and then through me and onto my son as well. So
cool.
Yeah, that's been in the family forever, and I love going to watch them. It's just the whole scene is brilliant, but it's as frustrating as it is good.
Yeah, I think the equivalent to that is being a Mariners baseball fan here in the States, and I am a Mariners fan, so I understand the pain and all that good stuff. So, man, 7 years old, farm bro, your dad got you into that, man. That sounds just like a great way to get into it. And you said he put a camera in your hand about 7 years old. So speaking of cameras, what's your current setup that you use?
So I use a mixture of full frame and crop sensor actually on the Nikon systems, and I use a D5 for my full frame stuff and a D7200 for my crop sensor stuff. It's quite useful to have a crop sensor in the mix as well, just purely because of the distances involved nowadays. I mean, you mentioned earlier the big accident that we had over here, the Shoreham disaster, and that's obviously pushed crowds further away and aircraft higher. So having a crop sensor is quite useful. It's also a smaller, lighter body, and it's flat, so I can get all sorts of angles that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get with the huge beast that is the D5 around my neck. So the D5 is awesome. I love the low light performance, I love the speed, I love the autofocus performance, and just the general toughness of the body. Although I do treat my gear probably not quite as carefully as I should. I don't know. It's a tool, right? And working in the environments that I work in, it's not always very easy to be that precious about your gear. So it does get the rough treatment, and certainly that I've found, from my personal stuff, that the Nikons do handle it pretty well. I have had some spectacular disasters with them, of course, as well, but where I don't think any camera would survive. But it's a Nikon setup, and in terms of lenses, I really like to make sure that my coverage has no gaps, because if you had a gap of like in the 80mm range, for example, that say you had a 24-70 and then a 100-300 lens or something, you guarantee that the next aircraft you shot on approach or whatever would always fit that gap. It's really annoying. So I do like to have zero gaps in my coverage, so I can with the full frame and the crop sensor, mathematics kind of factored in. I've got everything from a 10mm to a 750mm. Mixture of predominantly Nikon, and Sigma.
Wow, that's incredible to have that full range, and that's something I'm trying to get done right now. I think.
Yeah, it does help. Yeah, it really does.
I think my next big purchase for me will probably be the 70-200 Canon, because I got the 24-70, and then the 70-200 would be nice, and then I currently use the 100-400. So, like I said, I like to have all the coverage that would be preferable. So, all right, Nikon user, and let's get into a little more aviation specific stuff. So, what is your favorite aircraft of all time?
All time, it's got to be the F4. It just epitomizes air power for me. Just the amount of different operators that it's had, the looks, the double canopy, the bent wing, the amount of weapons it can carry, how it looks good from any angle. I think that's got to be number one. But I would also say, like, I had a real soft spot for the A10 when I was a kid. I remember sort of standing underneath one of these shows. I think it was an Alconbury show that we mentioned earlier, and just having the size of that incredible gun, literally the size of my face.
Yeah.
And that was a gun. It's like, oh my goodness. So, and the fact that the pilot sat on this bathtub of aluminium and it could do all this amazing stuff. Yeah, that was a real inspiration for me as a kid. And then anything kind of Cold War related is awesome. And I grew up in that era of the having the MiG-29 as a real mystery, and it being the epitome of Russian air power and the capabilities. No one really knew the shape of it, even really, when it was first came out. And then no one knew the capabilities of it, and then we saw it for the first time over here. And now I've been on deployment with them. I've been on their home bases. I've flown with them. You know what I mean? So the shape of the MiG-29 will always capture something of my heart, because it's kind of like a real it's the epitome of the enemy fighter, quote unquote, isn't it? But still the F4, hands down.
Well, hey, fabulous phantoms forever, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of building off what you said. So you've deployed and flown with the MiG-29. So
yeah,
can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I've done quite a bit of work with the Polish Air Force, and I've photographed them over in Russia and Malaysia and North Korea. Germany when they had them, probably some more air arms as well that I can't think of at the moment, but yeah, they're predominantly the Polish Air Force I've worked quite closely with.
That's pretty cool. So what's it like being up in a MiG-29, especially how you just said is like kind of those mystery fighters and the predominant of like, this is the Soviet air power back in the day and stuff like that, and that was what everybody was worried about. So what was it like being up in that?
So short and sweet, because the range is absolutely terrible. So, and also to clarify, I haven't been in one. I've flown with them. So I've flown, with transport aircraft with the cargo doors down, etc. I haven't actually had the privilege of flying in one yet. It's all been photography sorties from that kind of platform.
Okay, I see. Well, still though, I mean, either way, getting to see one from the air like that, and
absolutely,
it just has that.
It's menacing. It really is. And the way that you can tell, because obviously flying in a cargo type plane, when the door's down, when you're flying with a fighter, the similar airspeed is a real factor. The MiG-29 is fast. It doesn't like to be flying slow at all. It's not built for that. Whereas a cargo plane with the ramp down is obviously aerodynamically terrible. So it's the cargo plane will be as absolute max, trying to stay as fast as it possibly can, whilst the MiG-29 is as slow as it possibly can. So that requires quite a bit of skill from the pilot, and what that translates to in terms of a MiG is lots of smoke.
Yeah.
So you can literally see every single throttle input from the pilot, because every time he moves it a tiny bit, there's this belch of black smoke that comes out the back of it. So which obviously looks incredible from a photography point of view, but it's tactically quite interesting to see as well, because the visibility of a smoking MiG-29 up in the heavens is quite remarkable.
Yeah, that must be pretty cool to see in person, and just that aircraft, those flowing lines, how it just flows like that, and it's a very, very pretty aircraft in general too. Favorite aircraft to take a photo of? I'm assuming it might have been the Phantom back in the day. And,
yeah. Do you know what? It's easier to kind of categorize I would say, in my mind, with anything with smoke. I absolutely love the dirty, smoky jets. But at the same time, I also would love to shoot prop liners or old airliners. Anything like that that's old and smoky works for me.
So like B-52s.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
All about.
Yeah, damn right. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, those old prop liners. Unfortunately, the Erickson Aero Tankers just retired the last DC-7 from active fire service out here in the West. And I think Everett still has theirs DC-6 going up in Anchorage.
Yep,
that's always
that's
on my list to go and take a photo of.
Yeah, for sure.
Fortunately, it's Alaska, and when I wanted to go up there in the winter, I would have had 3 hours of light. So it's just like, So you guys have the Red Bull stuff down in Austria, right? With their DC-7 and some other stuff?
Yeah, that's a really impressive outfit. And even their headquarters is magnificent just to see. It's beautiful. It's such an amazing design, and there's like an incredible restaurant there. It's a real experience just going to the hangar. It's not just a hangar. They really do things well over there. So and the fleet is immaculate as well. I mean, there's some people that might say that if you're going to see a P-38, you need it in authentic World War II markings and it to be looking like a war machine, right? But obviously Red Bulls is you could practically eat your dinner off of it. It's beautiful. It's just this polished silver, and there's not a spot on it, but it's incredibly impressive for what it is. They're an amazing outfit.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those videos, and those pilots are some world-class pilots that are able to fly those things. Moving it on here, so you're not really an airport sort of photography person from what I've gathered. So, I mean, if you have a favorite airport to go take photos at, what is it? But what other like events or outside locations do you enjoy doing also?
Well, I mean, by airport, do you mean sort of like outside the base outside the fence at a base kind of thing?
Yeah, like
I love that.
Spotting.
I absolutely love that. I think aviation is such a strange pursuit sometimes, isn't it? You kind of have to be so passionate about it to do it.
Yeah.
Because you need the patience of a saint, and you need to be thick-skinned. You need to have all these different things just to be able to make it work and take a single photograph. It's quite a tricky pursuit to be involved in. So because it is a passion, I would love to sit outside a base for a day. I do that regularly. Yeah, man. I would do that anytime. So I think that does then portray the fact that I'm an enthusiast at heart still. I'd love to sit outside a base and see what happens. In fact, to the point, I don't generally even do the kind of ADS-B type, flight tracking stuff. If I'm going to go and sit outside a base, I like to be surprised. I want to relive that kind of like, you don't know what's coming in, and anything you get's a bonus kind of thing.
The good old days.
Yeah, a little bit. Perhaps showing me age there. I don't know.
So that being said, though, what is your favorite airport then to go sit outside the fence for a day?
That's another tough question there, Colin, because I'm very fortunate to be travelling as kind of like my main thing, is what I do. So having one in particular is hard. It's easier to almost list countries. So somewhere like Switzerland is an absolute favourite of mine. In terms of the scenery is just spectacular. The light is beautiful, very unpolluted. And then the access that you get around the airfields there, the bases, it's like you're on an operational visit every time. And the weather can change in an instant, so it's always a challenge for light and challenge for the elements, and battling rain and snow, and then beautiful sunlight, and against these gorgeous valleys, and with a lot of action. Switzerland is a cool place. It kind of stops being cool when you then hit the hotel and it's like $10 for a beer in the evening. But up to that point, it's amazing. So Switzerland's pretty high. I also love Japan. Anything in Japan is amazing. And there's a particular place in Japan down the south, one of the islands called Okinawa, and they've got a place there. There's like a concentration of Japanese air power on the island, and American air power. So it's quite a strategically important place. So there's a lot to see, both from a military point of view and a civil point of view. There's some really cool things to see there, and it's on a tropical island. That's pretty special. And then in the States, it's got to be Nellis, is just because it's Nellis. What a place. I love it. So I really enjoy visiting Nellis at any time, and the whole region, right? You know, that going up into Nevada and seeing what you can see in the desert and that kind of stuff is on a road trip is just absolutely magical. But probably edged out just by that would be Alaska, just purely because of the atmosphere of and how important aviation is up there. It's I've never seen a way of life rely on aviation like I did in Alaska. It's phenomenal.
If you live out in the wilderness, you have a bush plane and stuff. And Alaska aviation is this so different than this regular aviation in the lower 48. But yeah,
you have to see it to believe it, almost, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. You got little bush planes going underneath the landing path at Anchorage with all the 747s and stuff, and it really is. It's a whole different world up there, and I would love to fly up there in Alaska because that's where I think real pilots in the States are made up there. You go fly up there, you go fly bush. You have to shoot actual instrument approaches, and real deal up there. Those guys are real. Those are the real pilots, man. But yeah, Nellis, God, you can't ever go wrong with a day at Nellis.
No, it's just awesome, isn't it? The amount you'd see, and and how historic the place is, and just it's really the tip of the spear, that place. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's why I also did that in that my little bonus episode with Michael Grove.
Oh yeah, legend, another legend.
Oh, the Nellis OG.
Yeah.
And he said I was out here in the 1960s taking photos, and I'm like,
what a guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remember how we said earlier? It's like if we go back, damn, I wish I could go back then. I mean, oh man, just imagine being out there with no fence in the 60s and the 70s, like the Century Series fighters flying out of there and everything like that.
Fortunately, we've got guys like Michael that are able to show us a little bit of what it was like, right?
Absolutely, and hopefully I can get him back on here for a feature-length episode because I think that would be fantastic to get his story. So, what other events do you like attending? Whether it be the air shows, the low levels, or any of that sort of sense?
Yeah, I suppose low level epitomizes that thrill of the chase for me. I really do enjoy being out in nature and waiting for something to happen. Much in the same as like fishing, isn't it? You just can't say what's going to come around the corner. You don't know. There's no radar for it. It really is just potluck. And what a place to spend it. There's some beautiful territory over here in the UK with Wales and the Lake District and Scotland that is just, if you never see anything for a week, you've still had a great week. And it was very much the same for me in Death Valley as well. What a place to be, just to spend your days just in the desert there in Death Valley. It was just absolutely incredible. So those two places are very special to my heart. There's no doubt about it. I do enjoy shows. I particularly American shows. They've got a real flavour of their own, and I probably just to buy the t-shirts and the patches, though. To be honest,
yeah.
And the burgers, obviously, without saying, clearly.
Yeah.
But they're always good, and the weather's obviously generally 99% great over in the States for a show, so that's all good.
Little oddball question. Which burgers do you prefer, the US Airshow burgers or the wet burgers from UK shows?
Well, they're kind of the same. Wet burgers in the UK were done by the Air Force crews at Mildenhall, and they will never be beaten, no matter who you are, where you are. Professional chef, Michelin star, whatever. Those guys doing burgers in an old oil barrel cut in half at Mildenhall air shows will never be beaten. But aside from that, because they don't do it anymore, and the sauce hasn't ever been replicated since. It's got to be the States. It's got to be. Crikey, go to the stuff I've eaten at any show in America. It's just been awesome. It's just that's part of the fun.
Oh yeah, and then you go back home, and then a couple hours later, you're not feeling too well. So before we if we get off topic about who has the best burgers, with you going out to Star Wars Canyon a lot and out to the Mach Loop, what were your favorite passes at the Star Wars Canyon, and then what was your favorite passes at the Mach Loop?
Oh, wow. Okay, so Star Wars would have to have been the guys that flew the F-35s out of Edwards with the Dutch Air Force. They were amazing, and not only was it amazing to work with them, along with a guy called Frank Krabas to make some photography of their low-level training. But it was also interesting from another F-35 operator to sort of see how the Dutch really grabbed the project by the scruff of the neck, because they were literally next door at Edwards to the UK guys developing the systems, but they had such a different approach to how they were going to undertake the flight test and what was required and their flexibility or not. And honestly, it was eye-opening to see how forward-thinking they were in terms of really wringing the jet out to see its performance capabilities at low level, etc. Totally different approach to any other F-35 operator. So that would absolutely stand out for me. The F-35s through Star Wars Canyon that we did a few years back. And over here in the UK, the F-15E Strike Eagles of the 48th Fighter Wing are always spectacular. They're gorgeous. They look the part, and they're flown brilliantly. And they, because of the atmosphere we get over here, obviously there's a lot of vortices and condensation over the wings and stuff, so it's very atmospheric when they throw them around through the valleys. So that always looks cool. But I'm going to have to say that it's the Tornado GR4s that will win hands down, because those guys, I mean, they're a different breed, or were a different breed in terms of low level attack. That's what that jet was built for, and that's what the crews were trained for. So they're flying through areas of the low fly system over here at 100 feet. I mean, that it's unbelievable that they're training to fly and fight at that level, at that speed. So seeing a Tornado at low level with its wings swept back 67 degrees wing sweep, hurtling through at 100 feet is something. It's probably one of the finest sights in aviation, I would say.
Yeah, man, that would have been awesome to see that.
It's a real powerhouse, and they're sadly missed as well. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The RAF is a shadow of what it used to be in terms of air power and number of types. It's a very capable fighting force, but we have, from an enthusiast point of view at least, lost a lot in recent years. And that's, although it's sad, the RAF is an amazing machine at what it does, and will be all the better for it eventually. We've now got F-35s on our own aircraft carrier again. Crikey, it sailed out the UK in the last couple of weeks, didn't it? And that's quite something. That's pretty amazing as a Brit watching that happen. But yeah, I miss the Tornadoes, and that's okay too.
Yeah, the Tornadoes and Ashley Wallace's episode, he talked about the Harriers, getting the old Harriers.
Another one, there. Jaguars, yeah, totally, yeah.
Just, I agree, and I love seeing all those British-built aircraft back in the day, the Electric Lightning and stuff like that, and seeing all that sort of stuff. And that's why I actually watched a documentary about the RAF and how England was leading aircraft development in the 50s and all that, and just kind of stagnated in a way, and unfortunately, and I mean, I would have loved to see the Tornado down low, and unfortunately, a lot of the European stuff in the States was pretty rare. Actually, it was before I got into aviation photography. In 2008, up here in Idaho, you talked about the Phantoms earlier. There's an exercise called Mountain Roundup, and this is
right.
And the
Germans, I don't know that one.
And the Germans came over. I think they're a red flag, and then they came up, and they had the Tornadoes and the Phantoms on the guard ramp in Boise.
Nice.
And it's pretty cool to have seen the Phantoms with the Iron Cross and then the German flag on the tail, and then realizing that was the last ever active Phantom on our ramp. Idaho
that's a moment.
Yeah, Idaho flew the Phantom from 1975 to 1996, right?
Yeah.
And then, all of a sudden the Phantom was back for a couple weeks, and then I think everybody who was a Phantom guy was out there.
Nice.
And to see the last ever launch of a Phantom from, and it was an American one too. It was a German one, and then I with the tornadoes being out there, I think nobody really cared about the tornadoes. They only cared about the Phantoms. But luckily I've seen the German ones at Nellis, so can't complain about that. No RAF ones, unfortunately, but hey, it's just my fault for not getting over there in time, I guess. Yeah, I've seen the shots from the F-35 day at Nellis, Star Wars Canyon, and oh my god.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Those are some of the most stunning images I've seen come out of there, I think, ever. Like that was just oh man, it's just
it was amazing. It was amazing. But full credit to the pilots, as always, right? We're just standing there. We can say what we want and have all the ideas, but it's down to them to execute it.
Exactly.
And they nailed it. Obviously,
Yeah,
they were brilliant.
I know one of the things at Star Wars Canyon was, if you ever heard Archer call in,
yeah,
you were in for a good time.
You were in for a treat. Yeah.
So what about the rarest aircraft you have ever taken a photo of?
Well,
I know you took a lot of photos of a lot of aircraft, but if you can narrow it down to like
sure, that one's pretty easy. It has to be the North Korean MiGs. That was ridiculous. Yeah, North Korean Air Force MiG-29s, MiG-21s, and Su-25s. Etc. Those jets. I can't believe I'm even saying that I've done it. It's that crazy. Yeah, without doubt.
And that's the Wonsan Air Show. Were you at the Wonsan Air Show?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, September 2016. Yeah.
So what was it like being? First of all, what was it like being in North Korea?
Well, like I say, I still to this day, like what's that now? 4 or 5 years on, struggle to put it into words. It was extraordinary, and it really was extraordinary. You didn't really know what it was going to be like at all. You've seen the news, you've seen the media and the press and everything else, and politically and geopolitically and everything else that was going on. And bear in mind at the time, 2016, there was a lot of red button missile pushing going on.
Yeah.
There was missile tests going off left, right, and centre, and it was quite a hot time. So to be going over there and going to what was actually called a friendship festival, honestly, you weren't sure whether it was kind of going to be some sort of political porn type thing. There was going to be some, whether you're going to come back. I know it sounds over dramatic, but it really did enter your mind, and so much so that a lot of people didn't go because of it. There was literally just a handful of crazy people that thought, yeah, I believe what they're saying. I'm going to go for this. I think they were expecting around 5,000 people. And there were like 170 or something, 200. It's a few years back now, but it was that kind of level, 150, 250, that kind of like bracket of people that went. And even on the days we were there, you didn't quite know what you were seeing was real or not, whether it was being staged or not. And yet it seemed so natural. So how could it be staged? Yeah. And then you'd look into it a little bit deeper, and there'd be something there that would just be like, well, that just doesn't add up, and you come away from the day with more questions than you went into it. It was just incredible. Absolutely, one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I'm gonna say that.
Damn, I'm lost for words right now, but that must have been so cool. Not just to experience and kind of take a step back in time as well.
Yes.
But also just to experience, like, you're now one of the very few people in the world that said, I've seen the North Korean Air Force pretty much do their thing.
Yeah, I mean, the North Koreans don't see it. We know that it's a completely closed country. So being up close and taking selfies with MiG-29 pilots of the North Korean Air Force is like, what?
Holy,
I'm looking right now across my office here, and there's a MiG-21 kit, a model kit. And I think it's 1/72nd, scale kit that has been handmade it by obviously North Korean factory workers, whatever. But it's a good example actually, because it seems so normal to be going to an air show and buying a model, right? That's what anyone would do. But it's North Korea.
Yeah.
How have they made a model of a MiG-21 fully armed in North Korean Air Force markings and packaged it so brilliantly and sold it on the day for me to pick up? And, they wanted payment in euros randomly, because you weren't allowed to have their currency. You're not actually allowed to touch or have any of the North Korean currency as a Westerner.
Interesting.
So again, a normal thing, you think like just buying it, well, that's normal. But then looking at it deeper, it's not, because you can't pay for it in their currency. You have to pay for it in euros. And euros was their choice of currency at the time. And then you kind of, just the transaction itself, just literally going up to the counter, up to the stand and choosing a model and taking it away. And, that again seems normal. But behind the surface of that, it was really weird. I can remember it clear as day. The crowd kind of parted as I went up to the stand. This is a stand at an air show in North Korea, right? What? And then the crowd parted, and I got out my wallet and handed over 30 euros, whatever it was. And then, again, seems totally normal. And then the applause started. And I had a standing ovation, from probably 150 North Koreans, because I'd bought a model with 30 euros in cash. And so everything, literally everything, the most normal things in the world just seems so weird. Like, and next to that stand, the North Korean model stand, like who knew, was the brewery. There's seven different types of North Korean beer. And you just think, what? How was it? What? And they're all there drinking it, and there's just a completely normal scene. So it's just a beer tent with 7 different types across the pumps, and the girls serving then started karaoke, and they was all singing karaoke, and everyone's dancing, and then they've got cards out and they're playing cards on the deck and eating beer snacks. And honestly, you could have been anywhere. But you're not. You're in North Korea, having just photographed North Korean Air Force MiG-29s doing a display above your head. And honestly, I am still struck by it all. I'm still lost for words on it. I can't get my head around it. I really can't. It was phenomenal.
My jaw is on the floor right now.
Oh man, I tell you, I could talk all week about it, because it's totally crazy.
There's 2 more questions. First one, and I think it's the most important question of this, is how was the beer?
Actually, really good. Yeah, they were serving it in like it must have been 2-pint glasses, and I'll tell you, yeah, it's a good job I wasn't driving, because it was awesome. And we, got talking with obviously no one spoke English, but
yeah,
there's the universal language of beer, and that again seems so weird, because it was like they did this every day of their lives. It was like they came to a show, they played cards, they drank beer, and they sang karaoke every day, because it was so natural. And there's then this Westerner with like, $5,000 worth of camera gear around his neck or whatever, standing there next to them, and they'd never even seen a Westerner before, and they'd never even seen their Air Force before, and yet it was completely normal.
It's just an amazing paradox, with this.
It was amazing. It was the easiest way to describe it is that it was like we know it's a kind of like parallel universe over there to what we know as society. But it was like a parallel universe within a parallel universe, because it was nothing like you'd expect.
Yeah,
it really
absolutely
wasn't. But it was then weirder than you expected it to be in some areas.
Yeah, I bet. And my last question is, getting over to North Korea, you flew from Beijing on Air Koryo?
Yes.
Were you on the Illusion 62, or were you on the Tupolev Tu-204?
The 204 on the outbound. Yeah, and then we did and that was into Pyongyang, and then I transferred via IL-18 from Pyongyang.
Oh wow! So you're on the IL-18. So you're speaking old prop liners. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could buy, they were doing pleasure flights all weekend, so you could fly in, what was it? You had a AN-24, or was it 26? I think it was 24. IL-18, TU-134, TU-154, TU-204, and IL-76. Oh, and the AN-2 as well. And the AN-2. I mean, that is a mythical warfare weapon by North Korea. Those things are used by the special forces, and I've worked pretty closely with the Japanese Air Force, and one of their main concerns that they train against is an invasion. Obviously, they've got some pretty hot neighbors, right? So one of the strategic barriers they've got to come across is that the North Korean Air Force have got a lot of AN-2s, and they fly very low and very slow, which means they're really hard to detect on radar because they can fly a nap of the earth, and they're really hard to intercept, right? And they're then full of North Korean special forces. So it's actually a really important tactical asset that these Antonov AN-2s, these biplanes that they've got, and you can go and fly in them at the airshow. It was head shaking. I couldn't believe I was seeing it.
If I wasn't an American citizen with an American passport, oh my God, I'd be over there in a heartbeat for that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I would have bought a pleasure flight on the Tupolev 154, just hands down. That's one of my favorite airplanes, and just like, shut up and take my money.
Yeah, it really was beautiful. The little switches and knobs and curtains and just everything, the way the overhead lockers worked, and it was magic. It really was very special.
You're stepping into what would have been like air travel in the Soviet Union.
Absolutely.
That's for me that's and that for a lot of aviation buffs like us, that's one of the coolest things ever. So anyway, definitely. Man, God, I'm still. My jaw's still on the floor from that. That is.
Mine still is. It's been 4 or 5 years now.
That's amazing. It really is. Sorry, one last question, then we can move on from North Korea. So when you're taking photos out there, we all know photos in North Korea are very. It's certain things only, and all that. So what was it like being a photographer, photographing to North Korea some very, very sensitive state items?
Well, this is one of the things we were most concerned about, because obviously I was over there to do a job, technically, as a reporter and everything else. Yeah. So if the promise was that it was going to be okay, but if it wasn't, it was going to cause a bit of an issue.
An international incident.
I don't know quite. Well, I don't know quite how far you'd be able to take that. Nowhere, but it would have been a real shame. So, but there's eternal credit. It was a piece of cake. There was a lot of X-raying. There was a lot of cases being opened and cameras being checked and all that kind of thing. And they were obviously concerned about what you were bringing into the country more so than what your cameras were. You weren't allowed to bring a laptop in, for example, and your cell phones didn't work. Obviously, there's no cell phone network, so that was tricky, but quite nice for a little while as well. You had no connection to the outside world whatsoever. And in terms of the actual photography, the easiest way to get your head around it is that they'd sanitized Wonsan. So anything that you saw on Wonsan, they expected you to photograph and see and shoot and enjoy. Okay. So the jets were, I'm being picky now, I suppose you could say, but the jets were freshly painted, really fresh. There wasn't even a scratch on a single rivet anywhere. So they were very tidy, very clean, very sanitized, and it was still what it was, still North Korean military stuff and Air Koryo stuff, but you couldn't take, for example, like we were told when we arrived, you had a big briefing before you left China, but you were told when we arrived at Pyongyang that you weren't allowed to photograph the airliners on the ramp. But then once you were on the ramp at Wonsan, you could. Same jets, same aircraft, but that was the rules. Eventually, we did actually do some at Pyongyang as well, but that was by the by. That's just an example of how sanitized Wonsan was for photography. And part of the amazing indelible memories I've got of that, though, is that we were actually allowed to photograph from outside the buses on the route from where we were staying, which is a story in itself. But route from where we were staying to the airport every day, we were leaving pretty early, kind of like 7ish or something crazy, and we were allowed to photograph out the bus windows of North Korean life and society and housing and accommodation and people and all of that kind of thing. We had minders all the time. We had it was about, I think, 3 minders per 10 people, something like that. So they were watching what you were doing all the time. But yeah, we were pretty much that group of people that did that were the first to be allowed to photograph outside the bus as we went to and from our destinations, which is a pretty big deal.
That is really, really cool, and that has been probably one of the greatest experiences of your life, and I know that for a lot of people that would be also. But that is just insane how they went through all that effort to put on the perception, and that's what North Korea is a lot of based on. The foreigners, a lot of perception and all that, and that's cool that you got to experience that, and just the amount of monumental effort for 100 and we said like 150, 125 people, like Westerners, to be in there for them to do that. This is a monumental effort.
It was incredible. On those numbers when we were there, we were, I think, this is tricky to remember, but I think from the first impressions we had, there were 5,000 people going to be there. And once it became clear to them that wasn't happening, that there was only a couple of hundred people from around the world going, I believe they invited the residents of Wonsan to come at short notice, like literally on the day or the day before. And so there were droves of single file North Korean citizens coming out of factories and houses in Wonsan and making the kind of like 5-mile walk or whatever it was from the town to the airport every day. And they thought it was kind of like, that was then the crowd. And we certainly weren't expecting to be sharing the flight line with North Korean citizens. But then at the same time, they had all of that entertainment, all that beer stuff, the karaoke, the vending stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer my own questions.
For those North Korean citizens, that's probably the only time they've ever been able to do that, and
I mean, the passion they showed. They were in tears at within seconds of the show starting. There's like parachutists come down kind of thing, to start the show as would be normal at any event. But the patriotism that those guys showed, and the flag waving, crying. They're all sitting down, cross-legged in rows in their individual factories where they came from. In sections, and they were fever pitch at anything that moved, anything that happened, and shrieking and clapping and cheering and crying, and as I say, they're within seconds of a parachutist coming out of a Mil 17 hip that was above us. It's just, it was amazing.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Anyway. So let's move it on, and let's talk about co-op. I know that for you is your baby right now, and how you established that. So can you just give us a brief overview of what the Centre of Aviation Photography is?
Yeah, sure. So it's got its roots from when I was editor of the magazine, and I was building up a lot of relationships with the militaries all around the world, and got to know some of them really well. And I thought, well, I'm here reporting on this and it's going in the magazine, but actually what an experience it would be if my readers could come along and see this as well. So a few of the air bases I knew particularly well, I asked if next time I came, I could bring some of my readers along, and that they agreed, and we made it happen, and it was fantastic. In fact, the first one that did that was the last F-104 starfighter base at Grasanice in Italy. So that was the kind of the catalyst for it all, really. That set up something called the Aviation Photo Club. This is now in the early 2000s. And that ran for a few years until I left in 2008, and then picked back up in its new guise as the Centre of Aviation Photography, because I still felt that those years we did of getting having people experience photography in a new way of access and development and training, and shadowing me what I did and how I did it, and traveling all around the world doing so was so special that people actually really missed it when it stopped. So there was quite a demand for a new thing to happen, especially now that digital had taken hold as well. So digital really came about, for the masses, I suppose, in the mid-2000s. I went digital in 2005. So between that kind of like 2008 period where that setup finished, and then me starting it again in 2015, pretty much the world had all gone digital. And I really felt that I still had something to give into the aviation photography world. I still loved it. I still had the passion. Obviously, as I said right at the start, you have to have that passion within you, so it never really left, although I came out of doing it as a job full time. So we decided, Steve Comber and I, to set up COAP in 2015 to really take small groups of photographers around the world to events, and whether that's an air show as such or an event we've created ourselves, to immerse yourself in photography and the experience and the adventure of it. So small groups, perhaps it's a one-day shoot, perhaps it's a 2-day or a long weekend, or maybe even a 2-week shoot all around the world. And we also then run smaller events in the UK, like workshops and everything else as well. So we were on the road around probably upwards of 35 weeks a year on photography trips. And it was a pretty hectic, pretty full on, and very successful. It was, some of the things we'd managed to achieve was amazing. Quite honestly, it was incredible. But obviously, then COVID came along, so that all came to a grinding halt in February, March 2020.
And that brings us to COAP Online, and so you just launched COAP Online, and that's if I understand this right, that's like for a lot of like the up and coming aviation photographer to help them out and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it crosses. You can join at any level, really. If you're just getting into it, it's certainly, as you say, it's a fantastic place to really learn the trade and be inspired and learn different parts of photography, and from whether it's your camera or the processing of the software. But it's kind of like, I would say, for anyone that wants to take it further. So wherever you are, if you're a semi-pro and want to get really into it and start making some money out of your pursuit, or start getting published, that kind of thing, then it will absolutely be the place for you as well. Or right at the starting end of the scale, if you're just picking up a camera and want to know the ins and outs of how it works and what's best, then yeah, definitely. So the overall thing is, if you want to take it to your next level, then it's absolutely the place for you, no matter what your starting point is. But that came about from sort of March onwards. I started developing it, and we launched it about 3 months ago now. So it was almost to the day actually of when COAP ceased travel operations that we launched COAP Online. There was about a year's worth of development, and it's my aim is for it to be the number one resource for the aviation photographer for information and education, training and entertainment. And entertainment's quite an interesting word to bring into a hobby, isn't it? Because we love doing what we're doing, and we love the experiences of it and everything else. And there were some real gaps there. There wasn't anything that I would then pick up in an evening to watch or to read that fed my aviation photography need for consumer content. Obviously there's then been awesome podcasts, etc., explode as well now. It's hence we're talking, right? But there was a real gap for the aviation photography specific entertainment. So I set up what I've called COAP TV. It's actually it's a full TV station, and there's a TV channel where you go on assignment with me, you go on shoots with me, all the behind the scenes stuff. You see how I'm thinking, what I'm doing with my cameras, what I'm doing with positioning, and then I come home and then I edit the pictures, and it's all recorded, and you can see how I think and what I do and how I do it and when I do it. And then there's kind of like heritage stuff. There's old nostalgic stuff. There's crikey, I mean, there's about 12 different channels on there, all aimed at aviation photography entertainment, and it's gone down really well. You know, it's an awesome place for people to hang out. It's social media can be quite a toxic place sometimes, so having a place where people can go, you know what, I don't know what this button does on my camera, and please don't shoot me, or you know, because you can get really shot down sometimes, can't you, on forums and everything else if you don't know something or you are new to it. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird space sometimes. So yeah, I've created a space within Co-op Online for people to just go, you know what, I want to know how to print. I want to know which stabilization mode to use on my lens. I want to know which where you can view the aircraft at a base, you know, and some of those questions sometimes can be quite tricky to ask and answer. But within Co-op Online, it's a really cool space of helping each other's photography out, and it's been good fun. I've really enjoyed it.
And that's awesome how you created that space for the people that, you know, they don't want to ask the question because it might be too embarrassing. You know, I've had those questions too, and I've been embarrassed to ask. It should be something that
sure, yeah.
So I think that's an awesome thing on.
Yeah, it's a good concept.
Exactly, it's really good. Now, and I think that it would really help that person, you know, not like, okay, never mind, I don't like this community anymore, I don't want to be a part of it. So I think that's a great way for them to, hey, you know, we are a welcoming community and stuff like that. We want to see you succeed,
yes,
and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had people say, you know, it's like really reignited the passion for the hobby again, you know, which is it's just an awesome outcome. I mean, that's amazing. That's super happy with that.
Absolutely. And so you said you've done, it could be like a day shoot or a 2-week shoot and all around the world.
Yeah.
So what's been your favorite co-op event or trip that you've done so far?
Well, there've been
a lot.
I'm going to probably say, yeah, dude. Japan is amazing, and you honestly the culture and again the food and the aeroplanes and everything about that country is just awesome. You can't go wrong. But in terms of like a dumbfounded experience, you know, not in the North Korea wise, because that's a category of its own. But I would actually say Alaska was right up there. I have never seen aviation used like that, you know, and like I said earlier, you have to see it to believe it. But you know, there's the way they rely on aviation to survive, and the way they do it, and the way it's a part of life, really grabbed me. You know, you couldn't help as an aviation enthusiast to be totally blown away by the scene up there. You know, the float planes and the cargo planes and the whether that's piston or huge great big jets coming in with full of stuff out of Asia going into Europe, you know, whatever, just all of that stuff. And then you know, a pretty impressive military scene as well. And the people and the way they embrace life, and I would say that the trips we've done in Alaska really, because it's very seat of the pants as well. You know, I'm used to kind of like planning military operations months or maybe sometimes years in advance, and you know, working in that intense environment. But Alaska is just not like that. You know, it's just kind of like get up there and see what you can make happen. So yeah, working with some guys that you know that know the area really well and have a lot of contacts in the region as well. So I work with a guy from Austria, funnily enough, in that area. And we've produced, it's just been amazing, the results that have come out of that. You know, just the general aviation scene. I mean, like taking immense pleasure in shooting everything from a Cessna to a huge, you know, 747 cargo to a DC-6 or C-46 or crikey, you know, float planes or Aggressor F-16s. You know, it's just wow.
Alaska really does capture the essence of aviation. You know, you got everything. Like
you got
everything from a Cessna 172 to a 747 to F-35s and F-22s up there. It really does capture the essence of aviation.
Yeah, and I also work with the Coast Guard over there as well. Oh, yeah. And you know, crikey, Alaska's weather and environment, and you know, and that's extreme stuff. So the Coast Guard's mission is extreme enough as it is, search and rescue and all that kind of stuff. So doing it in Alaska where everything's magnified by about 10.
Yeah.
That was, I can't fail to be permanently in love with Alaska, I think now.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty funny is in 2014 when I worked for a major airline up there, in Boise, but a major airline. One of my good high school friends was stationed at Coast Guard Station Kodiak. So my other friends, we decided we wanted to go visit him for the weekend. So we flew up from Boise, took a red eye from Portland to Anchorage, and then we slept in the Anchorage airport, and we got a flight from Anchorage to Kodiak, and we got to go on. We were on base at Coast Guard Station Kodiak, and if you never have been on there, so the airport is shared with the Coast Guard station. So there's one road that connects like the main gate, and it crosses the runway. And so you have to stop and look. So we're driving, and so we look left, nothing. We look right, and sure as shit, here comes a C-130 rolling down the runway, and it goes right in front of us.
Wow! Yeah.
I'm like, that was so cool. And this all the dolphins, and they don't have the dolphins. They had the Jayhawks there. But yeah, that was.
Yeah,
that was
very
really
special.
Cool. Really, really cool experience. Just being up there in Kodiak, Alaska. That was awesome. But so you said COAP came from your time at Combat Aircraft. So being the editor in chief, what was that job duty like? And for somebody that doesn't know or not into the publication scene, what does that job duty really entail? So what were you doing on a daily basis with that?
Well, it's not perhaps as glamorous as you might think. It's cool, and it was amazing, and I did it for 10 years, so it's a big part of my life, and I absolutely love it. And it taught me a lot of things around writing and publication and the whole magazine industry and stuff. But it really, it was a very small team. It's kind of myself and one other, and that's it on the editorial staff, literally. And then we had obviously subcontractors for contributors, and a secretary and a designer. So you'd have a wider spread team, but in terms of editorial, it was really small. It's very small and efficient. But I suppose back then as well, it was initially just the Combat Aircraft was every other month, and Aircraft Illustrated was monthly. So we were on a cycle, and sometimes you'd hit an extremely busy week, where there were deadlines left, right, and centre, and crazy stuff going on. And then other weeks you wouldn't need to pick anything up for that whole week, So it was very cyclical on that. But then sometimes you'd find those weeks, it's like a 5 week month. Sometimes it would creep in, but when I started in '98, we didn't even have email, So I was telling my kids the other day, but up to when I was 30 years old, I didn't have email. There was no social media, or anything like that. So they're living sort of 18, 17 now, and living that life. And they would have another half of their life to go before they even received an email. Back in terms of relative technology. So we would be saving our design work on a what were they called? It wasn't a floppy disk, but it was the next one up from that.
And compact disc CDs?
No, next one. It's like it could take like 100 megabytes, which is a big deal. I know you're... Yeah, big fat things. I can't remember what they were called. Anyway, so we'd then save it to those, and we'd physically drive it to the designer's house. And then he'd design it, and then we'd pick those discs back up, and then obviously take them to the printer, and then we'd get proofs back, physical printed proofs that you'd have to then write on and make the changes. But my boss, Alan, before that, he was obviously been part of it even earlier, where it was all made up from printing blocks and stuff, So I came at a relatively advanced stage, but not that much. Then we bought in internet into into the company because we could recognize the benefits of sending an email. And on the old AOL dial-up and everything we were on.
Oh boy,
yeah, man, it was real pioneering stuff, and we had to have our own email addresses because the company didn't necessarily believe this was the way to go, but we wanted to do it because it was our own. We could see the benefits to it. So we just had our own emails systems on AOL dial-up and used that to communicate, and then gradually, obviously, it went ballistic, and we were then able to communicate worldwide with contributors from all over the world. So we'd then sometimes commission stuff, but most often it would come in just through the post, to be honest. Again, people weren't taking digital pictures. This is 98 to 2008. So, we would be relying on people sending slides or prints, predominantly slides, through the post as an editorial submission, and we'd sit there over a coffee in the morning and discuss what we were going to do, what had arrived, what the balance was like in the magazine, because that's really important, especially in Aircraft Illustrated, where it was a mix of civil, military and historic. You couldn't have too much military or too much civil, whatever. So you had to really balance the types of features out, which we'd do then on what was called a flat plan. It's literally a printed A4 piece of paper with the page numbers on it, and you'd write in there what each article was going to be, and then cross it off. One cross that it's the designer, two crosses that it's back, and crazy stuff. And it would be unrecognisable now. Obviously, that changed by 2008. That had changed. It was a bit more high tech than that, but certainly that's very fond memories of doing it that way. And we just then compile the mag on those editorial cycles, and I'd still absolutely love to go into Smith's and see it on the shelves, and that's something I still get a buzz from today. Crikey, it's crazy that I can get an article in a magazine today, and still love to go into Smith's and say, "No, that's mine. I did that." Sad but true.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting with my age group being 26, and we were still growing up in the old kind of before internet was a big deal, and we were still riding bikes. I mean, I usually every summer until 2009, 10, whatever, before I got into the sports and all, we were riding bikes. We were out there doing this, but we weren't doing a lot of video games and stuff like that, because that wasn't really online video games wasn't really a big thing yet, consoles and stuff. I didn't get my first smartphone until my senior year of high school. It's just and then now it's oh wow, some kid showed up with an iPhone back in 2010 in high school, and it's holy crap, right now everybody has one. It's just and so it's kind of I understand that in a way, because I still have even as a kid, even how terrible of a photographer was, I still went to the airport or air shows, and I took those little disposable Kodak cameras, and I took photos with those. I don't know where the rolls of film are, but I swear to God, I still have them somewhere.
Definitely, and I hope so.
And I don't know what's on them, but I hope there's that one.
Oh, you never know. You never know. Yeah.
Exactly, but I mean, I really do. Yeah, I really do understand that, especially kind of the my age group right now is we were in that transitional period from old ways to where we're able to do this talking right now.
Nice.
20 years ago.
It's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it, because it's very easy just to think okay, this is just everyday normal life. I'm talking to you over the internet, and this is going on a podcast, and I can talk about it on social media, and I can put it into this amazing TV station that I've got, and it's hold on a minute. When did all this happen?
Man, if we were doing this 10 years ago, we'd be having the dial-up tone still going right now.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, real quick, one last thing before we start wrapping this up is, with your time with Combat Aircraft, what was your favorite shoot that you got to do while you're with the Combat Aircraft team?
That would be one of 2, 3. So, tricky one. I think so. There was the F-104s that I did, I would choose that one because of what it led to. That was the catalyst for kind of I want to take people with me on this experience and show people a side of aviation that's not necessarily everyday access, and yeah, what that then developed to will always be special. I think then another one would be the stuff I did with the F117s at Holloman. That was monumental. There's no other word to describe that. And yeah, just forever grateful for that opportunity to be able to go out there and do that and call it work, crikey. And then the third one would be the F-14's final cruise on Operation Iraqi Freedom, and being able to be a part of that and fly with those jets. Yeah, just great days.
A lot of cool stuff, man. A lot of cool stuff. Stuff that you look back on and like, damn, I actually did that.
It really is.
That's pretty
cool. Yeah,
that's really cool.
It is, yeah.
Oh.
It's incredible. Yeah.
It is. Anyway, just be respectful of your time, so let's start wrapping this up, man.
Sure.
Do you have any tips or words of encouragement for the listener out there?
Yeah. A few. And, there's... I don't know. There's a couple of ways I can go on this, but I think in terms of your gear, I would get to know your camera inside out and really know not necessarily how it works in beautiful, light, sunny days, but when things start to go wrong. So, like, what are its weaknesses? What doesn't it do very well? So that you can then anticipate what happens when it does go wrong. When it's against the sun, or the cloud comes over, or it's pouring with rain, or the aircraft's too far away, or it's moving really fast, or you're too close. All of those kind of things. What do you do? How do you do that? So, knowing your gear really well, especially your camera, in terms of the buttons and what they do, learn it with your eyes closed. Literally, so you know that. If you need to adjust the ISO or exposure compensation, you can do that with your eyes shut, so you don't have to think about it, and then you get the shot, right? And I'd also then say that the other part of that is obviously then knowing your software in terms of post-processing. Really learn it, know what it can do, so that you're almost shooting in a way that you know how you're going to process it and you know the end result in mind. That's a really certainly how I work all the time is I shoot with the end result in mind. So that makes it easier because I know my camera well, and it makes it easier because I know my software well. And then I'd say get out there in all weathers. Photography isn't just about the sunny shots. The drama of the elements can greatly add to it, and it's all about the experience then as well, isn't it? It becomes a bit more of an adventure the more harder you have to work. So I would do that for sure. And be inspired by all those amazing. We've got some incredible tools at our fingertips. The social media world of being able to see millions of images at the flick of a thumb. Just get inspired by other people's work, but don't necessarily then copy it as such, but use it to develop your own style and niche within your own interest, and do what you like to do what you enjoy doing. And which leads me on to another point around perhaps the social media side, because it's quite easy to slip into that. You're photographing purely to be the first, or to get the kind of ego that comes from social media and everything else, and that's not always what it's about. It is about enjoying it and taking the camera away from your eyes sometimes and just viewing aviation for what it is, this incredible spectacle. So yeah, don't always go for that social media thing around likes and ego, and just do it because you love it, and that you'll certainly get better photographs as a result because you're enjoying it more. And I suppose finally, as a wrapping all of that up, is just be a nice guy. Just don't fall foul to egos or anything else. I could go on a little while about that one, but just be a good dude and be nice to people, and the universe is nice to you back. Trust me.
Absolutely, that's so well said. I mean, I so much agree with you saying that social media is not about followers. It's not about likes. It's about you just sharing your work. And a lot of up and coming photographers, they really need to understand that. They really do, because it really, like, I just took a month break off Instagram, which is my biggest social media platform, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it, because I felt like I proved myself that I can disconnect from this, but also it felt like I was shooting for myself again, right? The time before social media was a big deal, right? Like I was shooting for myself. I wasn't worrying about posting. I wasn't worrying about will people like this. I wasn't worrying about all the stupid drama that comes off social media.
Said.
But most importantly, I spent more time with the people I love. You know, I caught a mountain bike, so I went mountain biking with my girlfriend. I started working out more and stuff.
I'm jealous, dude. I might have to try this.
I mean, seriously, like, if anybody is, if you just want to just disconnect and take a break, just leave your account active, but just delete it.
Yeah.
Just log out of your account. It is just because it really clears your mind and it clears your soul, and then you realize how much more time you have on your hands. Like I had so much more time.
Wow.
Like I actually got some projects done that I wanted to get done, and you know I'm out there. I'm not worried about, oh no, I have to post this today, or oh it's about this, or there's like, hey, this airplane's coming in, you should go get it. And like, well, but I didn't know, but like, you know, it's like people like, I didn't get a heads up, like, hey, this is coming in. Okay, but if I, you know, now if I like, oh, I'll probably go get that airplane, but I'm glad I didn't, because now I got to spend more time with the people
that's really cool, man. Really cool.
You know, what you said is just being a nice person too. Is, you know, help out the younger generation. You know, we want to keep growing this. So we got to show that this community isn't all about egos and that sort of stuff. So that is so well said on your part as well. But speaking of social media and all that, well, where can people find your work? I know it's in a lot of places, but in your immediate work, where can people go out and see that? And
so, yeah, I mean, to be honest, most of my stuff, because part of this is my life and my work now, you know, so a lot of my work and social media stuff gets concentrated into Co-op Online for obvious reasons. I do obviously have my own Instagram, Twitter and Facebook and everything else, but I don't know, I don't use it as much as I should, you know. So I mean, my Instagram is richcooperuk, and Co-op has an Instagram as well, Centre of Aviation Photography, and that's the UK spelling, CENTRE. Centre of Aviation Photography has a Facebook page. I'm on Facebook as just myself, Rich Cooper, and Twitter and everything else as well. But, you know, yeah, it's okay if you don't follow me. It really is. This isn't about getting me likes. I would strongly recommend you take a look at Co-op Online, because everything I do, all the behind the scenes stuff, everything I shoot, everything I do within aviation is shared in Co-op Online. That is my baby, and that's where people's photography is, to use a pun, you know, taking off. You know, it really is. It's a bit of a game changer. So I would say just check that out, and yeah, let me know what you think.
Absolutely. And we'll put a link for Co-op Online in the episode description, so all you guys can go check that out as well. And but Rich, thank you so much for being a great sport. This was the awesome conversation.
I loved it. Yeah, thank you.
I think if you guys didn't enjoy this, you gotta re-listen to this, because I don't think you realize how insanely cool it is to go to a North Korean air show. I don't think people realize how difficult that is too. But man, if you guys didn't enjoy all of this, man, I did. I thoroughly enjoyed this, man. I loved it. Thank you. Thank you for being a great sport about this and able to reschedule and do this. But yeah.
No,
but anyway, guys, this is the part of the episode where I got to do my spiel. And if you guys know anybody who you think would love to come talk aviation with me here on the AvSP, shoot me an email, askspotterspodcast@gmail.com. You always can send me a direct message on Twitter and Instagram @BOISpotter. And hit me up on Facebook. Send a Facebook message to the Facebook page, Aviation Spotters Podcast. And also check out the YouTube page. Great resource for people that don't have Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of the other mainstream podcast platforms. So please go check us out on YouTube as well. And, but, yeah. Rich, anything else to add before we close her out here?
No, I just loved it. And I just love being part of this new media of aviation photography. It's great. You know, it's really brought it home to me how much of a dinosaur I am as well. You know, talking about how it used to be. Crikey. But yeah, super happy to also be embracing all of this new movement in our wonderful hobby.
Absolutely. And anyway, Rich, again, thank you for coming on. And as always,
Pleasure.
guys, keep those batteries charged and those cameras ready. And we'll catch you on another episode of the Aviation Spotters podcast.